This is Bonnie Wiley, and I have my cousin with me, Jeanette Carlson Swingle. Jeanette, we're so pleased to have you back. And you were with us one other time and shared your weight loss story, so let me put that picture up here. And Tiffany can't be with us today, but we're delighted to have you with us. And Tiffany has good days and bad days. We'll try to get her on another day, though. Yeah.
That'd be great.
So, yeah, that would be great. Okay. So first, let's just start with a background of your background and how you met my cousin Bo, and just a little bit about the background.
Well, Bo was 19. He was a baby when we met, and I met through my sister. Actually went to school with them and introduced us, and we just kind of hit it off. Everybody was pretty surprised because within 3 months we had decided that we knew we were meant to be together, and we met in February, married in May, and we've been together 47 years. So it's been an exciting trip. I was not a farm girl, but I quickly learned to be one. And I used to always say, if I knew then what I know now and the places my hands would be, I probably would have run really fast. But we've had a great life together. He's a good, strong Christian man. We have a good, strong Christian family and background, and that's what's gotten us through life in our different journeys.
Just tell us a little bit about the beginning. You know what? Before we get started on all that, please, we want this message to get out. I think it will really inspire and encourage people who have major physical issues or any other kind of issues, crises that you're facing.
Yeah.
So please like, comment, share. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and then the bell. If you're on Rumble, do the swipe thingy or the plus thingy. And so, yes, from what I heard, this was back 24 years ago. Am I right about that?
Yes, in 98.
98.
Tiffany was 17 years old.
Oh, goodness. So she was still in high school?
She was going to be a senior that year. This happened in August, just before her senior year. She woke up one morning and said to me, she came down and she said, "Mom, I just don't feel good." And she looked different. And I said to her, "Well, just go in on our bed and lay down so I can keep an eye on you." I don't know what made me do that because she's 17 years old. She would have gone back up to her room. She laid on our bed. Throughout the day, she just kept looking worse and worse and worse. And Bo had to go for a load of sawdust. And I kept pacing the floor thinking, you got to get back. You got to get back. I called the doctor. And he was like, "Well, bring her in at 4. And I'm not liking the way this kid is looking. She vomited once. That was it. But she's getting grayer and grayer. And I just can't even describe how bad she was looking. He came in the door and I said, "We need to take her to the hospital immediately." And he just kind of looked at me. Kelly and I had to dress her. She didn't have the strength to dress herself. Put her in a sweatsuit, tossed her in the truck and took her. By the time we got from our house to Honesdale, which is 13 minutes, and this was at 7 o'clock in the morning, we got her there like about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. She could not walk under her own power into the hospital. I had her arm around my shoulder and I was carrying her while Bo parked the truck, and we took her in there, and I seriously think they thought she was an overdose problem and kind of blew us off at the beginning. But I said to him, no, you have to pay attention. This is something desperate. By 5, 6, 7 o'clock that night, we knew there was a major problem, and Bo ran to call Aunt Sylvia, which was on mother-in-law's side of the family, and she was head nurse at the hospital. So we explained what was going on, Bo did, and she immediately called the pediatric specialist, and he came over. He took one look at her and knew immediately what her problem was. And it was meningococcemia, which is the worst of the bacterial meningitis. It goes septic into your system, and he could tell by looking at her immediately that was the situation. The head doctor there tried to say, well, we could keep her and treat her here. And he just looked at him and said, "Are you used to burying children because you do not have the equipment here. They life flighted her out. Of course, Mom's sobbing. Tiffany's looking at me going, Mom, it'll be okay.
So she was lucid during this time.
She was lucid. She couldn't stand the lights. We had to dim the lights. She just they had put 3 bags of fluid in her, and when they tried to cath her, they could get no fluid out of her. So there was definitely something that her body was absorbing this. So,
can you tell me the difference between, you said it was the worst kind of meningitis. How is that different than just regular old meningitis?
It's a bacterial meningitis, but it goes septic, so it goes into your system. They gave her, how do I explain this? The proteins and stuff in her body just opened up, and literally she was bleeding out internally. Her veins just opened up. She was bleeding out. She has scars all over her body. We tried to figure where these particular ones were, and we realized after, when we looked at them, they were at the point where we had picked her leg up to move it for her, or we had held the back of her head to hold it in place. I had my fingers on the back of her head, and she actually has 2 little bald spots back there. She tells the kids it's how she keeps an eye on them. It's her 2 little eyes back there. And she bled out through that, and the tissue became necrotic and had to grow back. And she has that all over her arms and legs. But that was where it made pressure on her skin. So
is this rare? Is this rare for this kind of meningitis?
In other countries, it's not. It's quite active. But in this country, it happens in confinements. Like she had a boyfriend and friends who were in college who came home every week. And it happens in college dorms, prisons, army barracks, and things where there's a lot of confinement of people. It's more prevalent. But now they have the vaccine out, and they really pushed that. And this was right after she got sick. They started requiring it for kids going to college. As a matter of fact, when we got home, we called the school, and they said, if there are kids going to college, we will help them pay for their vaccine because we don't want anybody to go and get this.
So you had shared with me that this wasn't your first issue with a child. You had another child, Carrie. How many kids do you have now?
We have 4 girls.
You have 4? Oh, wow, 4 girls. That's cool.
So
it was Carrie, right? You had an issue with 2?
When I was pregnant with Carrie, they started running me through all these tests, and this is wrong. That I'm like, what is your issue? The doctor said her head is bigger than what we feel it should be, and I'm like, well, aren't all babies' heads bigger than their bodies when they're And he kind of snickered, and he said, yeah, but I think there might be a problem, and if it's hydrocephalitis, we can go in and we can drain it and we can fix it, and there might be this other issue. And it was just, they had us scared. And he said, we want to start performing these tests next week. And I wasn't really comfortable with it. I didn't feel that there was anything really wrong. And I watched the ultrasounds and I saw the test results. I didn't know where he was coming from. So we went to church that Sunday, and it was funny because I got up to go up front for prayer. And the other kids are sitting there going, Mom, Dad, where's Mom going? Where's Mom going? He said, shush, just be quiet. I went up front and they prayed over me.
Good.
I can't describe to you the feeling that went through my body. I mean, from the top of my head to my toes. And it was just the most glorious, comforting, wonderful feeling. And I pray someday I feel that again, because it was just fabulous. And I went back, and Bo just kept watching me walk up the aisle. He had this funny look on his face, and I went in and I sat down, and he whispers to me, are you okay? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, what's going on? He said, you just have a glow, like there's a glow about you. And I said, I said to him, do you trust me? And he said, yeah, absolutely. I said, well, I don't want to do any more tests. I'm done. This baby's fine. There's nothing wrong with her. I'm just so over it. I said, if there was anything, it's not a problem now. So we went to the doctor on Monday, And he wanted to know, are you ready for these tests? And I said, no, I'm not. Well, he was a little puzzled. I said to him, are you a Christian? He said, absolutely. And I told him what happened. And I said, well, my belief is that this child, if there was anything wrong with her, is healed. And I'm going to trust God, and I'm not doing anything else. He said, okay. She was born perfectly healthy. She was a straight A student. She's a smart kid. She's married and got 4 kids of her own now. So that was my first real, I'd prayed over this child, and I believed in prayer, but when that hit and then she was fine, I was like, I'll never doubt, I'll never back down. When Tiffany got sick, that was the thing. They life flighted her out. We went down. I had my cousins were there. They lived in Danville, or right there in Danville and Milton. They went to the hospital because I just wanted family with her till we got there. We went in, and they called us into the room, and the sight was just devastating. We took pictures because we knew we'd have to explain to her at some point what was going on. On the way down, I'm fighting to get the cell phone to work, to call them and to call somebody else and say, get a hold of them. And Bo's trying to drive, and he's upset. And all of a sudden, I threw the phone in the glove compartment. I said, I can't make this work. But I took a deep breath, and he said, now what? And I said, I don't know how it's going to work out. I don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be different. But I just know that it'll be okay. And he looked at me, and he said, again, with the, you've been praying, and do I trust you? I said, yes. He said, okay, then here we go. I said, it'll be different. It may not be the same, but we're going to take her home. And I told the doctors that, and they just looked at us like we had 3 heads at first. And
you had shared with me that, didn't they tell you 7 different times that
absolutely.
They weren't going to be able to save her? It was just up to her and God what he would do.
When 2 weeks after she was there, they called us into the room, and they said, we want to make sure you guys understand how bad this is. When she came in, we assessed her at a 5% chance of survival. And she's come out this far, but there's still a lot of issues, and it may take a while. And we said, well, we believe God is here with us. We're here where we're supposed to be. And they said, okay, but do you see? I said, I see what's there. I see it. I'm not stupid, but I believe there's a better outcome coming. And we had doctors that actually stood by her bed and prayed with us.
Oh, wow.
Took her name to their churches and took them to prayer lists. They stood side by side with us, shoulder to shoulder. You guys were there and prayed with us. 7, like you said, 7 separate times during the 59 days we were there. They came in and said, there's nothing medically we can do. No medication. We just don't know where to turn, what to do. Here it is.
Can I ask you, at that point, what was happening in her body so far at that point?
She had lung issues. She had heart issues. Heart was a big thing. And that was another thing. I can name specifically times when they said, this medication won't work. This one, we've got a switch or two, but in the switch, her body can either accept it this way or this way. And Tiffany always went the bad way. She never went. We used to say to them, don't give her an alternative, because she always goes the bad way. And they would switch the medicine and try it, and she might nosedive for a few minutes. But when they were going to do that, we would always call the prayer chain, and then they would reach out, and they would reach out. And it just went. We had contact from all over the United States about people who were praying for Tiffany specifically. One instance, my mother and dad were at a gospel prayer song and singing episode they were having on the beach in Florida. And my dad, who doesn't do that, stood up and said, I need everybody here to pray for my granddaughter. He did not know anything was going on. And when he called me the next day, he said, everybody prayed and sang and praised the God and prayed over her name. And I said, what time was that, Dad? He said, 7:00. And I was like, but that's when they came and said, this has got to turn around now, or we don't know what to do. My aunt was on a flight back from Florida to Danville, and she talked to this young man sitting next to her, and he was going to get off at a certain destination and go and have a prayer lunch with his prayer group. She said, well, would you please pray for my great niece? And they prayed on the plane. They had other people on the plane praying. When she told me the time, it was specifically when one of those 7 times when something was going on. Hamlin Assembly of God, one night we called them. Kelly was down there with us that weekend, and they came in and they said, she's crashing. We don't know. And the doctors were running, and we're standing outside the door crying and just, praying. And Kelly ran to the phone to call the church. And Pastor White said, I didn't think anybody was going home that night. They all came to the altar.
Oh, I love that, man.
stood there and prayed and prayed and prayed. And she came through it. I mean, she came through the whole thing.
And was she lucid at the hospital?
No, she was in a drug-induced coma. And that was an issue we had because she had her 18th birthday on September 12th. She got sick in August. On September 12th, they wanted to bring her out of this coma because in 2 days they wanted to remove her fingers and the toes. They had to get, they were necrotic, so they had to get to such a point before they could actually remove them and not have more issues down the road. So they wanted to, because she turned 18, they wanted to bring her out of this and discuss it with her. And I was livid. I was like, absolutely not. I said, you're going to hold up these blackened fingers, shriveled fingers, and try to explain to her after she's been in this drug-induced state. I said, is there any option? Does she have an option? No. I said, then just do it. So they finally conceded and did it. And, she's left with what she's left with now. But her foot, when we went in after the operation, I went in and her feet were out. Her orthopedic doctor, Dr. Hess, walked in with me, had his arm around my shoulder. He was one of the ones that prayed with us. He still deals with Tiffany. And he said to me, look at her feet. And that was hard. That was hard. If with the foot, the ball of your foot, everybody says, if you don't have the ball of your foot, your toes, okay. But if you don't have the ball of your foot, you can't walk, you can't balance. Well, hers was gone. She's got this little bitty foot sticking up there with no joints at the ball of the foot and no toes. He looked at me and he said, what do you think? I said, I don't know. And he said, do you think she'll ever walk? And I looked at him and I said, yes, I do. And he said, then that's the attitude you keep. And that's the attitude you don't let go of. And that's what we keep in our prayers. And she'll walk. No problem. And she walks this day with no prosthetics, no anything. So
that's amazing.
Her hands were harder for me. I couldn't deal with that right away. I mean, I'm a mom and I watched my daughter do her nails, 17 years old. She kept them very neat and pretty and she was proud of them. And the first time I saw her hands, now Dad went in and he actually helped change. We did help change bandages in the hospital. We went in and we were in her room. So we were hands-on. We knew everything that was going on with her.
Who seemed stronger, you or Bo?
I'd be a toss-up. He did the hands before I could. That took me a while. Because when you saw them, her bones were to this knuckle in her hand, but the skin was down here. There was no skin in the palm of her hands. All you saw was tendons and bones. They wanted that to grow back. And in God's ultimate wisdom, when her hand healed, she's left-handed. When her hands healed, her left hand, there's just little nubs. There's nothing, no fingers. But her thumb is longer. It's only gone to just below the thumbnail. Her right hand, she has partial index, but her thumb is shorter to the knuckle, but she has that index. So she still has a grip. And that was the main thing they were worried about. If you lose your thumbs, you have nothing. But she has those, so she has grip. And she's just done wonderful.
So when she finally did come out of the coma and saw, what was that like for her?
She just looked around, and it was kind of funny. Different things happened because she came out of it slow, and she would kind of see things that was like why is there an elephant running through my room? And it was just the drugs wearing off. And we giggle about it. And we thought we were hiding a bottle of soda behind the curtain, but she managed to see a little bitty bottom of that and yelled because she wanted some. But she came out of it. She was good natured, and she looked and she said, why did this happen? And we were glad we had taken the pictures, and we explained it to her. We had the pictures developed, and we said, when you're ready, you can look at them. Well, she wanted
So
to
her
see
hands were So her hands were all bandaged during this time?
Yeah, they were in the beginning, they were bandaged like a football. Her feet were right out. They were just stitched across the end, but her hands were as big as footballs bandaged. And so she had no idea. So we showed her the pictures, and of course she shed a tear or two. We shed tears, and we said, there just wasn't anything we could do, Tiffany. There was no way to save them. But she was at some point about to lose her right hand and part of her right arm. But her orthopedic doctor, the one, Dr. Hess, that I said we were in touch with, he caught me crying in the hallway one day, and her main PICU doctors, and they said, are you okay? What's going on? I said, I'm concerned because my daughter's going to look at me and say, how did this happen? What did you do? And I don't think we're doing everything we can do. I said, you're trying to save her life, and I get that. But I have to look at my 17-year-old daughter and explain how she lost her fingers and how she lost her toes. And then they said, you're right. We're so focused on her life that we're not looking at the extremities. So they went back and re-looked at things. And Dr. Hess came up with a plan and did what they call a fasciotomy. And they went up one side of her finger and down through and up through each hand like this, and just put and split and went inside and just opened her hand right up so that circulation could get in there and save what they saved.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a long story. It's a rough road, but the night they took her fingers and her toes, we're walking back, and I'm crying. He's trying to hold it together, and the nurses said, we're so sorry, and I said, no, I said, that's not why I'm crying. I said, if you want the honest to God's truth right now, I want to go out in the parking lot, and I want to sing, and I want to dance, and I want to shout, and I want to tell the devil, you're done. You can't take any more of her. You're done. You're through. She's going to survive this. You've taken all you can take from her. And they were sobbing at this point, and they're like, well, come on, let's go. Let's go out and dance and yell.
And you're making me cry now.
And that's the way I felt. And I kept saying, it, devil, you're done. You're not getting any more of her. God said, I'm going to take her out of here. She's going to walk out of this hospital one day. First time she didn't walk, we carried her, but she's walked out of it many times since then. And
Can you tell me when she was in the coma, she could hear, right?
She did hear. And
what did she say about that later?
She said, Tiffany swears, they said she can't hear anything. She's never going to remember this. We gave her medicine. She's never going to remember. She remembers a lot. So we always tell people, if you've got someone in a coma and they're telling you this, don't believe it. Talk to them. Tell them you love them. Give them something to go on. I mean, I used to lay my head on her pillow and say, Tiffany Ann Swingle, you told me it was going to be all right. You promised me. I said, don't you dare break a promise. This is one you're not breaking to me. You're going to be fine. She had, of course, went to church with us all the time, and she had taken karate lessons, and karate told them to find a center and focus. And that's what you did. And I kept telling her, remember your training, find your focus and center yourself. You're coming back. You can't be where you are. And Bo talked to her constantly. They used to use us because she ended up on dialysis. Her kidneys were completely shut down for 31 days. And the nephrologist, God love her, she was so good to us. And she said, they can shut down for 31 days and they'll come back just fine. And I'm like, 31 days, 31st day, her kidneys started back up on her own. In the meantime, we had to do dialysis, but blood pressure has to stay at a certain point. Hers would go too low. Well, they'd stand the bed and she'd be laying on her head and everything else. And they wouldn't let Bo talk to her because when Bo talked to her, she mellowed out and her blood pressure would come down. So if they wanted her blood pressure to come up, they'd say, send mom in, because I would go in and tell her, I'm going in your room. I've been in your room. Your room is not clean. I opened your drawer. I dumped everything on the floor. Tiffany, you need to get in there. And I would just give her all this nonsense, you know, and you could watch it creep up, creep up, creep up. They said they're better than medication. We don't need to adjust medication. And when it got high, if he would talk to her, he could sometimes mellow her out and calm her down. But she definitely knew. One of the nurses told her she was going to Disneyland and taking her kids. She said, when I come back, I'm going to bring you something. Well, Tiffany was awake when she came back. She looked at Marianne. She says, where? Well, did you go? How did your kids like it? And she pretty near fell over. She's like, she heard me. She couldn't have heard me. She was just amazed. And right away she ran out because she had gotten her some little scrunchies with Mickey Mouse's on them and brought them in and gave them to her. But no, everybody was amazed that she could, different things that she had heard. And I kept thinking that, and when in the first couple weeks they would go in and be looking at her hands, the doctors would be looking and stuff, and one day I just said to him, you know, I don't like this. And he said, what don't you like? I said, I was talking to the nurses, I said, I don't like the fact that they go in there and they're discussing her situation. And I know they say she's out of it, but they're picking this hand up and the fingers are all blackened and withered and they're holding her feet up. And I said, you don't know what she can see and what she can't, because once in a while you'd see little slits of her eyes. And I said, or what she recognizes, she could be having horrible dreams and repercussions from these conversations. I said, can't they do that outside the room? She said, absolutely. Next time they come in here, tell them you want no negativity in this. I made a sign, put it on there, no negativity.
I love that fighting mama spirit you have. Wow.
And when they went in, if they had to look, they'd turn their back to her and pick her hand up in front of them so she couldn't see it. And I don't know if it helped or it didn't, but we had no more of that where, you know, I was just afraid if she saw that, she'd be so confused and so. But she says she heard us. She said, I knew you guys were there right from the beginning. She swears she saw us come into the room that night. She was totally out. She was totally under all this Versed and morphine and stuff that just put her in that coma. And they said, there's just no way. And she says, I saw you come in that room.
So let's move on to what it was like when she got home. She was in how many days?
59. The first thing she did was her PICU doctor came in and she asked her, can you sit on the bed by me? And she looked at her and she said, thank you for saving my life. And that doctor just lost it. And she's a tough cookie. She's not going to break down for anything. But we're in touch with her to this day. She's been to Tiffany's wedding. She's been to Tiffany's baby shower. We still keep in touch. She gets pictures of the baby all the time.
Okay, so you're getting ahead of us because now some people don't know that there was a wedding and a baby that came after all this. Yep. Now that was several years later, right?
Yes. It was Tiffany. It took 18 months to heal all of Tiffany's wounds. Tiffany has suffered with really severe headaches and different things. We've had her back in the hospital. We almost lost her again a few years later with adrenal insufficiency. Her adrenal gland had been getting little boosts along the way with different steroids, and nobody realized that her adrenals had suffered so much. Actually, a resident picked up on it when she was in the hospital one time. And boy, did things jangle when she went out and said, you know, did anybody look at this? And then they realized, and they came in and they told us, we're sitting there eating donuts and drinking coffee and watching the TV. And they came in and they said, you have to leave. We're like, what? And they came out later and said, if she had not been on the IV fluids that she was on at that time, she would have died before we ever got her home.
Wow.
But just different things that have happened. There was mistakes made that in God's ultimate wisdom, it wasn't a mistake, because at one point back in the beginning, they were putting a central line in her neck. Her lungs were overexpanded. They nicked the lung, and her heart was having real stress issues. And this was one of those 7 times when we don't know what we're going to do. Well, they punctured the lung collapsed. They had to put a chest tube in. When they put the chest tube in, they discovered an unseen pocket of fluid that was compressing her heart, which was causing a lot of the situation with her heart just fluttering and not being able to beat. There wasn't a room. So God knew it. God fixed it, you know.
So what was it like for her getting around and all that when she got home? You said it took 18 months, did you say, for her to
Yeah, we got her
heal?
home. We got her home and we did a lot of her bandage changes and stuff. We had Aunt Sylvia came down. She was a nurse. She had trained in that. She trained with us. We worked. It took hours for the first couple months to change all her bandages. They had to be changed every day. They had to be treated like a burn. You had to peel that little healing layer of skin off every day around every single wound so that the skin would continue to grow back. If you left that dried piece on there, it wouldn't move anymore. So every day we had to do all that. And it was 18 months before they got the last wound healed. But Tiffany, in the meantime, her feet had healed pretty well. She learned to walk. She got up and started walking. She learned to balance. Her trunk is her balance mechanism. That's what she uses. If she walked across the floor now, other than saying her feet look really small, people wouldn't realize that she didn't have any toes.
That's amazing. Wow. So she still suffers from headaches, right?
She does. And there's nothing we've gone through. We've gone to Jefferson Headache Clinic. We've gone here. We've gone there. She's tried acupuncture. She's tried everything they've thrown at it. And some of those procedures were so extremely painful for her. But she never said no. She always tried any drug combination that they gave her, because sometimes they'd give her 3 drugs at a time. Well, this works for a migraine. Try this. Well, it might not work at all, and it'd make her sicker than sick. And we finally got it down. Her neurologist worked with us and worked with her. And all in total, she was over 80 different medications in different combinations. And I kept saying, this is going to kill her kidneys and her liver. We can't keep doing this. But they finally got her doctor, 2 neurologists at Danville. They're both retired now. Said that they went back, took more MRIs and looked at it. And they found a minute piece of scar tissue in her brain. But it's in a spot that they would never dare to go in and operate on, because it would cause her to lose her ability to speak or some of her movement. So it's just inoperable.
So if they were able to remove that, it could alleviate the headaches.
Well, the thing with her is she does tend to scar more. They said it could actually cause more scarring also. So by going in, so they said it's just not an option for her. And
can I just interject here for anybody who is watching, listening? If you're on the road, maybe you're just listening. Remember Tiffany in prayer and just pray that God miraculously takes away these headaches. Okay, go ahead.
Her doctor had told us that. He said, as quick as this came on, it could be healed. So he said, don't ever give up that hope. And we haven't. Some days are pretty tough, even now. But she's down to 1 main medication. That's not easy either, because people who have to have a certain degree, a certain classification of medication are frowned upon. They're looked down on by many people. And it's a shame, because they deserve to have quality of life too. You deserve to have quality of life. I don't care what's causing your pain. And if your doctor diagnoses it and gives you a medication, you take it, you live, you have a life. She got married. She met a wonderful man.
How far along, how many years after the incident did she meet and marry this David?
Actually, we had known David for a long time. He used to hang around all the time with the boys up the road. And let's see, 8 years ago, they got together. And 6 years ago, they got married. A year ago, they had a baby together. And everybody said, I didn't think she could have one. Well, she could physically, but because of the medications that they were, that she had been on, she was afraid what that might do to a child, to a baby. She didn't know how it would affect them because of some of the strong meds they had her on. But she always prayed. She always did want a child. And surprise, December, she came in and said, guess what, Mom, I'm pregnant. So we have little Bo Sadie now.
Okay,
there she is.
There they are. Yeah.
She's named after her grandpa, and she's as smart as a little whip and walks down.
And there's her grandpa there.
Yep, there's grandpa and grandma and Tiff while she's pregnant, and that was just before she had her, actually.
Really, she looks beautiful. She's a gorgeous, gorgeous girl.
That was her 21st birthday.
Oh, wow. How old is she now?
Well, Tiffany is 42. But Tiffany looked at it. They asked her, how do you feel about losing your fingers and your toes? And she just looked at them with this look like, what do you mean? And they said, well, how do you feel? You lost your fingers and your toes. She said, my fingers and toes don't make me who I am. And she said it just like that, like, what's wrong with you? They just, amazing. That's what she tells everybody. That doesn't make me who I am. And it never did. So she never let that define her.
Good. Oh my goodness. You've had some other issues too, like Bo has had some.
Oh, in 2016, Mr. Swingle decided to have heart issues. And at that point, we were about to retire the farm. And it's a good thing we did, because I know him. We would have found him in the barn someplace, because farmers don't give up. But he had decided he wanted to try truck driving. So he was out on the road, but he just wasn't good. And they ran him through all the tests, and they kept saying, he's fine, he's fine. I said, he's not fine. There's something definitely wrong. We took him to his primary care, and I said to him, would you please look up the test, not the reports. I want you to look at the test. And he looked at him and he said, there's an issue here. We're going to do a catheterization. They took him in for a catheterization, and they never even let him out of the hospital. They loaded him in an ambulance and took him down and did a triple bypass in the morning. So he was 7 or 8 hours on the heart-lung machine. A year later, he had a stent. A year after that, he had another stent. But since then, we did have one challenge back in 2000. They had another doctor come into the area, and he had taken over Bo's case, and he thought he saw an issue, and it was a bad one, and he couldn't. All summer, we sat on pins and needles because we couldn't get in to get it taken care of. And he said, don't do anything because you could die at any minute. And he got not feeling good one day, and I just took him to another place because I couldn't get him in where he was. So I took him down to another hospital and got him in, and they looked at it and ran him through. They said, we're not seeing what he's seeing. We're just not seeing it. And of course, we'd all been praying over it. The kids are praying, please, God help daddy. We want our dad, and we want our grandpa. And they went back and looked at everything, and there was nothing there. That blockage, whatever it was gone.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Your story is amazing. And I want to close with this. You seem like so strong. Tiffany seems so strong, but there might be people watching or listening that are feeling weak right now, and they might think, my goodness, look at me. I feel so weak.
I lost you, froze.
They feel, I froze? You froze. Okay, you're starting to move again. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can, yeah.
Okay.
I just, even during Tiffany's journey and Bo's, I said to him, somebody said, I don't know how you do it. And I said, I can't do it alone. I don't have that strength. I depend on God to get me through it. I have to. I get through because I have to. Physically, I have to. But God carries me when I can't. When I'm at the end of my rope and I don't know what else to do. I mean, it's like everybody. You tie a knot and you hang on. But I depend on God to carry me through. There's no way you can do it without him. I don't know. That the power of prayer is just... I don't know how people live without it.
That's right. That's right. So what closing thought would you leave with people?
I would say no matter what you're facing, whether you think it's a small problem or a large problem or whatever it is, God's there for you. And you can ask him to help you with anything. My weight loss. I was at a point, Tiffany came in and said, I'm pregnant. And I'm like, oh, what do I do this? I'm going to be 70 years old. I need to get healthy. And I thought, I can't ask God to help me lose weight. but I did. I said, Lord, I need to be healthy, and I know I have to do this. And I prayed about it. I just turned to God for a lot of things, and I asked for his guidance and his wisdom, because I don't have the strength and the willpower on my own. And I know that that's what sustained us through Tiffany's journey, and what sustained all of us through Bo's problems.
That is our answer. That's how we survive. Well, thank you. Hey, Mama Bear, would you close us in prayer?
Yes, I would. Father, please use this story to touch people's hearts. Help them to know that you're here always and forever for them. And it doesn't matter where they are in life, or what they've done, or what they need, that you are strong and you will always be here for us. And I will depend on you myself. I know Bonnie does. My family does. And we thank you, Lord, for always being there for us and being there for others. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Jeanette. And we look forward to hearing it from Tiffany's lips someday too. But my goodness, what a story. Please, everybody who's listening, watching, make sure you like. When, I don't know if you understand this, but when you put a like on someone's video or post, whatever they put out, it causes Facebook and YouTube to put it out to more people. And then another person puts a like and it puts it out to more people. It's just the way they work. So we want this word to get out. We want people to be encouraged by this story. And Jeanette, thanks again. We love you so much. We're delighted that you joined with us today, took the time out to do that. And we wish you the very best, and Tiffany and David the very best. And we'll talk to you again. Okay?
Okay, thanks, Bonnie.
All right.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.